It's winter here in Australia, and that means it's time for me to make my very first quilt. And I'm excited. If we've never met before, my name is Carly. I usually make patchwork pieces that are really fun and unique, and I have been a long-term admirer of quilts, but I have just never really delved into it myself. This is just some of my collection of quilting magazines and books. If I'm being honest, for the last year probably, I've been collecting inspiration points for the kind of quilt that I would want to make, and I feel like I'm finally ready to get started. I just moved back into my old room, by the way, so my life is kind of in shambles at the moment, but I literally don't care. I'm putting it all to the side and I'm making a quilt. Priorities. Even though I have a single bed right now, I want to make a queen size quilt so that it can kind of travel with me as I get bigger spaces and a bigger bed one day. So I got some 100% cotton wadding for my quilt, and I plan to hand stitch all of the quilting with this really fine crochet cotton. I got this at the secondhand market. Slay! And because I just moved, I do have to begin this video by bringing all of my boxes of scraps and fabric up into my room. So let's do that. I actually don't know if this fabric's going to fit in my room, but we'll figure it out. Also, this is a perfect point in the video where you can hit the subscribe button if you so please. I'll give you a little moment to think about it. Go on. You won't regret it, probably. People often ask me, Carly, how do you store your scraps? And I'm like, literally just in IKEA bags, and I just shove them in random places, so. That one was gnarly. Look at that pinch. The rock climbers know. The rock climbers know about pinches. Oh my gosh. That one was crazy. See, I don't know about you guys, but I just need to have all of my scraps around me all of the time, so I know what I have to play with. Okay, now that I have all my fabric up here, I can run you guys through the inspiration for the project. I've actually had a really fun time curating all of my inspiration into one place, which actually leads me to the sponsor of today's video, which is Milanote. Milanote is a tool for organizing your creative projects. I've been using Milanote currently to help plan today's projects, just work on some design elements, and just start to visualize what I want my quilt to look like. When dreaming about the quilt, I had a huge jumble of ideas, points of inspiration, and even just different colours and textiles and patchworking techniques that I wanted to work with. And with Milanote, I was able to sort out all of my ideas in a nice, clean, articulate way and start to make a plan of attack. It's so intuitive to work with, and as a creative who needs to see something to understand it, being able to sort out all of my ideas in a visual and practical format is so helpful and super functional. This is my main project board. Here I have my project plan and my rough design and to-do list, as well as some subboards that dive into inspiration points and colours I'm drawn to and what I want to use in my quilt. I even put a little video in there with a link to some hand stitching techniques that I want to incorporate, which feels very fancy and fun. This is my mood board or my inspiration board, and you can see there are a bunch of pictures that showcase the hand stitching quality that I'm interested in using in this quilt, as well as a few quilts that I find really inspiring, and also some patchworking and tiling patterns. You can add notes, images, videos, tasks, and more all in one place. I'm obsessed. I'm using this for all my projects in the future. Watch out. I like to collect photos and points of inspiration and even just sketches of fashion design and stuff like that from various places online using the Milanote web clipper. This makes saving images and links directly to my board super quick and easy, and you can also drag and drop straight onto the board. As you can see here, Milanote have over 100 built-in templates for every type of creative project. Whether you're a fashion designer or a sewist like me, Milanote can make starting a new project so easy and effortless and honestly, very fun. I work alone usually, so I'm always asking my friends and family and my boyfriend for feedback and opinions on what I'm working on. I really like that on Milanote, when you're ready to share your work, you can send a link off to your colleagues, or in my case my boyfriend, and ask them for their feedback or to collaborate with you in real time. I shared this board with Elijah, who is my boyfriend and also an artist, and I asked him for his feedback on the colours and if he felt like they worked well together, and he was able to leave that feedback for me right there on the board. Awesome. Helps that the feedback was positive too, so thank you, Elijah. Also, one of my favourite functions on Milanote is the colour drop function, where you can put a picture into your mood board or inspiration board and then use the colour drop function to create colour swatches for the project. So now I have my own curated colour palette for my quilt using that beautiful colour drop function and taking that from all of these different photos. Oh, love, love. Finally, Milanote is available for free with no time limit, and if you enjoy using Milanote, please let me know in the comments. I would love to fangirl with you. Sign up for a free Milanote account using the link in the description, and thank you so much to Milanote for sponsoring this video. Now that I've shown you my mood boards, why don't we get into making this quilt? Yay! So as you can see, a lot of my color inspiration for the quilt were kind of these kind of bright but earthy tones. Maybe colors that you would find in Austria if there were a big flower patch or something like that. I don't really know. But basically what I have to do is go through all of my scrap boxes and just find colors that I feel like will fit in that world. Yes. Immediately, yes. I think I might try and stick to cotton-like fabrics. Oh, kind of cool. I'll make like a shortlist pile of all of the fabrics that I think could be contenders. And then usually when you have a shortlist pile of lots of different types of fabrics, you can just pinpoint what's not working. I always find when I put them all in a big pile, be like, oh, that one looks ugly. Oh, so pretty. Okay, I have my mildly ugly pile of scraps, but I feel like it's kind of cute. I don't really know. Basically, I feel like these scraps are friends, so I'm just gonna start patchworking them together. Until I basically just have a patchwork piece of fabric that's as big as my quilt wadding. I don't know what style of patchworking I'm gonna do yet. I'm just gonna follow my heart and I will keep you updated. If you've never patchworked before and you want to make something like this, I have a video specifically about patchworking. So check that video out if you're interested. Let's do this. I've been talking for too long. Also, have you guys seen this meme? This guy, he's like, spectacular, give me 14 of them right now. I love it. Fabulous. Give me 17 of those with some sauce. Spectacular. Spectacular. Maybe I should incorporate Uncle Toby's oats. Or jam. I don't know. It's getting crazy up in here.
Spectacular, give me 14 of them right now.
Really? Spectacular, give me 14. Spectacular. Give me 14 of those. Give me 14 of those.
14 with a bottle of sauce. There you go.
I want 17 with a bottle of sauce. Bottle of sauce. Spectacular, give me 14. Spectacular, give me 17 with a bottle of sauce. Spectacular.
Guys, sorry I was kind of rogue in this video. I hope it's okay. Lol, I was just feeling it, whatever. This is me starting my patchwork for the whole quilt. I did a lot of rectangles. I pressed out the seams. You can do whatever shapes, whatever sizes. Patchwork is super fun and flexible, and I love it for that. I kind of got a bit crazy with it and did some curved shapes as well, which was fun. I just marked out where I needed that seam allowance to go with my air erasable marker, and then I just pinned really carefully. Just make sure that you add seam allowance if you're doing this, because it's kind of essential somehow. And then once I had done enough curves, I kind of just built it out so it was a nice rectangular or like square shaped piece so that it would be able to be incorporated into the rest of my patchwork nice and easily.
Okay, I'm taking a little pit stop to show you where I'm up to at the moment. I've kind of just done this small little patch. There's a tiny bit of warping because of the curve that I sewed, but I think it's going to be fine once I start quilting it all together. And yeah, the colours in a big pile on the floor seemed a bit overwhelming, but seeing them together like this feels better. I think I might cut out this horse and then just do kind of some scrappy borders around it and incorporate it. It's really large, but I just really like horses on it. Okay, I went somewhere there. It's been many hours and I've just been patchworking. I'm making all these different kinds of strips. I've made some strips that are the length of the quilt, like really long strips. This little horsey section. This section where I did all of these little strips. But basically, I'm just working in pieces. I feel like it's a lot more manageable for me when they're in small bites. And I think at this stage, I do need to have some lunch, but what I want to do is lay out my quilt wadding on the floor and then start to plan out where I want each piece to sit. And that will give me some sort of grasp on how much work I need to do and how big I need everything to be. So I think this is about 2.5 hours of work, and laying it down like this kind of feels like in Parks and Rec when Ben makes his claymation and then he watches it and it goes for like 2 seconds.
You think a depressed person could make this?
This piece feels really fun to me though. I really like this little shiny bit. And also, bam, Horsey Town. Hey beautifuls. Hi friends, it's the next day. I basically spent several hours yesterday putting together all of these big blocks and positioning them on my quilt wadding, and now it's fully filled, but the pieces are not joined. So today I need to join all of my pieces. Basically, to preserve the placement of them, I kind of did this big like rolling burrito situation. So here is my quilt wadding with my pieces. I'm really hoping they didn't get too disheveled in this process. After piecing together the top portion of my quilt, I need to run to Spotlight and see if I can source a bottom lining portion of my quilt. I was going to patchwork that, but I think it would be nice just to have one colour, so that it's kind of like crazy on the top and then kind of really chill on the bottom. On the menu today is patchworking all of my pieces together to make one big queen size quilt piece. Getting a lining, sandwiching them all together, pinning them, sewing them together, binding the quilt. I know that's a lot, but I'm feeling a little bit delusional, so let's go. This color. I think it doesn't have the right width for the quilt, but if I get 2 lengths of it, sew it down the middle. Fine. Check how pretty! It's such a nice green. I think this is going to make the quilt seem a lot more chill, having this on the back. I feel a bit delusional now. I don't know how I thought I was going to get all of this done basically in 2 days. The sun is probably setting in the next hour, so I'm just pressing my lining, and then I'm going to take this and the wadding and the top outside, which is the only place big enough in my house to actually lay all of this out, and I will pin it all together, and then basically I can stitch. Alright, we're outside. I've got all of my layers. I have recruited my boyfriend, this is Elijah, to help me with all of this process because I'm running out of time. So let's do this.
Let's do it.
Don't you think the colour's so nice?
It's so good. And you just sewed it in the middle, hey?
Yeah. The lady was like, this green is beautiful. And I was like, I know.
It's quite good.
Well, I think you're actually meant to have the quilt wadding be the biggest part. So having excess lining is fine. Yeah. Kind of good. I believe this is what they call the quilt sandwich, which is basically lining, wadding, then whatever your top layer is, sandwiching them together. I think my quilt is meant to go lengthways down the bed, like the longest part down the bed, but I've done it the other way because I want it to overhang on the sides of the bed. That's a personal preference. Oh, I think I can get rid of that thread. So many hairs. So like what I want is there to be some excess of these so that none of the main part of the quilt is missing out on any lining or wadding. Just wanted it to be extra.
Daffy Duck is beautiful.
He is beautiful. I really like that the instructions are in
Yeah.
the patch.
It's very vintage looking.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it is. Basically, now that I've got it all out, I'm just going to smooth it as much as possible and then use my quilt pins to pin it down. I've got some excess on the side here, which I'm gonna chop, which will be fine. I just need to probably back tack over the seams I chopped through, but no biggie. It's a bit warped up here.
How does it get warped?
Yeah, I don't know. I think just because like there's a lot of sections that don't have straight lines, and I wasn't really particular with how I sewed it, and I didn't even press it that good. I think like all of that sort of creates some warping. I think it will look cool once I trim it all down. It's just like a little bit weird right now because I don't want there to be bunching in particular places. Also, you guys should check out my dress. I just tested this dress for Frock Studios. It's called the Garden Dress. It's so beautiful, guys. It even has pockets. It has all of these pin tucks on the front and the back. I think the pattern gets released really soon, so if you want to make your own, you should. It also comes with sleeves and like different options. It's beautiful. Let's get back to the project. It's pretty acceptable. Made curved safety pins? Spectacular! Give me 14 of those right now! Fabulous! Look at that.
And zooming.
Slay. This plus quilt, slay. I'm so everywhere, I'm so Julia.
They.
Slay. I'm being slay right now. Sorry, I can't come to the thing. I'm being slay. What does that even mean? I don't know. Don't ask. I'm slay. Slay. Slay in the evening. Every single day. Slay, slay, slay. Okay, all of my safety pinning is done. Hopefully I did enough. But basically, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV now and just stitch away. I listened to you guys and I do have a leather thimble this time, so hopefully that kind of protects my fingers as I'm working on this. And I think I'm just going to do vertical lines, not a grid, just vertical lines every 3 inches or so. I haven't decided between 2 or 3 inches. But yeah, that should be around 32 lines of stitching for this quilt. So who knows if I'm going to get that done tonight. That seems like a lot of stitching. But I'm just going to start and we're going to see how it goes. Imagine I have more space though, Mum.
Wow, that was so good.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Thanks!
You
That
nailed
was
that
my
one.
best one. Bearing. Forget.
Can have a laboursome future in peace.
Oh yeah.
I want to live. And I want to sew.
Oh, no, that's pretty 3-inchy actually. Don't want them getting any less than 3 inches. Spectacular, I'll have 14 of those. Oh my goodness guys, this took so long. The last time I spoke to you was on Sunday night and I spent Sunday night all of Monday, like 10 hours of hand stitching yesterday and then a few hours this morning and now it's done. So I kind of budgeted a bit badly for time. But yeah, 31 rows of hand stitching. It looks kind of beautiful. I'm obsessed. All I have to do now is trim the edges of the quilt and bind it. I've never bound a quilt before, so I'm just going to do my best. I think I want to do a patchwork binding. But yeah, if you're a quilter, hit me up with some tips in the comments if you see me doing something crazy, because that's pretty much inevitable. Also, I've been thinking a little bit about whether I wanted to even out and make sure that everything is perfectly square, because I've seen people measuring their quilts very meticulously, and I've decided against it. A lot of the pictures that I used for inspiration for my quilt had these kind of warped edges and like wonky looking lines, and for some reason I was really drawn to that aesthetic. I do quite like when something looks organic and handmade, and even though it's not perfect, it's just really warm and inviting. So I'm just going to leave mine with a little bit of warping, and honestly when you put it on a bed it's basically unnoticeable anyway. So I was trying really hard to smooth out my fabric as I was sewing, and I sewed most of my lines in the same direction, and I still have this sort of bunching at the end. How do I get this not to be this way? It's just a little bit annoying. It's right at the end, but I think I'm just going to push it into the binding and it's not going to be too noticeable at the end of the day. I think around 10 meters of binding is going to be enough to get this done.
To make my patchwork binding, I just cut out these really long strips. They actually were about 3 inches wide.
It's like a 2-inch.
Yeah, 3 inches.
2 inches maybe?
3. And I just cut them out of heaps of different fabrics and sewed them together on a diagonal.
All of the fancy quilting people seem to join their binding on this diagonal, but why? Because I also see a lot of people doing their binding like straight on the grain, like they're not bias binding. Tell me your thoughts. Am I meant to make it bias binding or is it just binding? And why would I join it on a diagonal if I could just join it on a straight because it doesn't need stretch? It looks cool. I'm gonna do it. But why?
Because ultimately I do trust the quilters of the internet. They are very wise and knowledgeable, and thank you for sharing your input, quilters. I basically sewed them into a nice long strip about 10 meters long, then pressed out my seam allowance, and then I pressed it in half with the right sides facing out. And again, I had no idea why I was doing this. I just decided to follow what they said blindly. Trust the process. And spoiler alert, they were absolutely correct, and this is the right thing to do. I sewed down my binding at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then when I got to the corner, I pivoted, sewed at a 45-degree angle, and then I flipped up my binding like this, finger pressed it down, and then you flip it back down on itself like so, and finger press that down. And then I stitched at about 1/4 of an inch away from the seam, at the top of the seam. I don't know why, I just literally followed a tutorial, so yeah.
I will link the tutorial I used to do this because I don't even know if it's correct. But basically, my two bindings overlap like this. I marked where it meets, and then I marked 2.5 inches past that point because the lady on the tutorial told me to. Then I flip it so it's right sides up, and then I flip this so it's right sides up, and then I align it apparently with my mark. And then I'm going to sew diagonally. Do I know if it's going to work? No. So here is my join. And I'll trim it. I think I didn't leave quite enough fabric to do this. It's just, it was a little bit fiddly, but not really problematic. Trim. Flip. It's like maybe a smidge. One smidge too short. But if I stretch, no problems. That actually worked really good. It's kind of beautiful and seamless. I'm shocked because I just didn't really feel like I could do that for some reason.
The audio cut out here, but basically I just trimmed the seam allowance of my quilt because it was a little bit bulky. I pressed that up into the binding and then pressed my binding down over it, making sure that it covered the previous stitching line from the binding. Here would be a great place to use clips or pins, but I literally couldn't be bothered, so I just stitched it down. Honestly, it turned out wonderfully. I used a really close match for the color of thread, so you can barely see it on the bottom of the quilt anyway.
It is complete. Hand stitching is very laborious work. I think it looks incredible and I would definitely 110% do it again. Having a really nice single color as my backing feels like such a great decision, because if I'm not in the mood to have this crazy patchwork, then I have this beautiful lush foresty green that I would be so happy to enjoy. And I think it's really nice that I have the option of just kind of folding over a little bit and just having like a peak of patchwork at the top. I would never ever recommend making a quilt like this in 4 days. That was ridiculous. I need to rest my hands and my heart. I will add a little name badge at a later date, but my little fingers are too tired, so I'll do it when I've recovered. Also, I'm really glad I went with a cotton batting. I think that was a really smart move instead of a polyester. It's going to make it really enjoyable to use, I think. If you've never made a quilt before and you're interested in it, I think give it a go. I really enjoyed this project, and I think it would be super fun to work on over a long period of time. Anyways, that's enough yapping for me. If you're still here, I think you're an absolute sweetie and we should be friends forever, if you want that, so thanks for being here. And I guess if you want more content from me, that's super sweet as well, and you can find me on YouTube, obviously, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, my Patreon, and my website, where I make happy handmade things, and all of those links are in the description, so yeah, check them out if you want. Anyway, let me know what projects you guys are working on, because that's my favorite thing ever to read in the comment section. I love it so much, and I will see you all in the next video. I'm sending you lots of love. Yes.